Hey everybody, it's Carmel. Welcome to my channel. I have a tutorial today and I'm super excited about this tutorial because it's the first in a series of videos that I'm bringing to my channel where I'm going to share my top 5 tips with you about different aspects of craft. For the first video in this series, I thought I would start with a big one, which is Copic Coloring, because I know a lot of us love to do it and a lot of us struggle with it. So I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I've learned a lot along the way, and I want to share the tips with you that I wish I had known when I first started colouring. I also want to add before we start that I'm not affiliated with Copic or any of the other brands or companies that I mentioned in this video. I'm just sharing personal experience. Copics are my number one personal choice when it comes to alcohol markers, that's all. So this tutorial is going to be a real nuts and bolts tutorial. I'm going to break it down for you as best I can. There's going to be no speeded up footage of me colouring beautiful images. I'm just going to show you in real time exactly what I'm talking about so that you can try out these techniques in your own colouring. So tip number 1, guys, when it comes to Copic colouring, we need to use a light touch. I really can't emphasize this enough. I think this is the thing that gets us into the most trouble when it comes to alcohol markers, especially when it comes to blending, but we'll talk more about blending a little bit later on. For now, we just need to remember that we need to use a light touch when it comes to Copics. Because I think what happens to us is we see all these amazing colorists and artists out there and they're coloring these beautiful images and we want us some of that. So we get our Copic markers and we start coloring. And for most of us as crafters, it's probably our first time using markers in like 10, 20, 30 plus years. So our memory of colouring is something like this, you know, where we've seen other people using round strokes and we've seen other people doing this and we fall in love with the richness of the ink and we think, wonderful, I love alcohol markers. And then we start to blend or the ink starts to dry and we start to see what happens on the page in front of us and our card doesn't look anything like Christina's card or whoever's colouring videos we've been watching. So we need to use a light touch with alcohol markers. We need to colour something like this, just feather light touch, straight, just laying the colour down on the cardstock, light touch. And the reason for that is that everything about Copic markers is different to felt tips that we use. Everything is different, from the pigment to the mixing agents to the tip to how the colour actually transfers onto the paper. Everything about them is different. So our approach to colouring needs to be a bit different to how it was when we used felt tip markers. I'll show you exactly what's going on here. It's still not completely dry, but you can see the difference already. What's happening over here is the ink in Copic markers is really fluid and juicy. So the beauty of alcohol markers is that we don't need to actually colour. The ink almost does the colouring for us. We just need to lay it down on the paper. When we go in like this, what happens is, I don't know if it's going to show up on camera, but you can see these little circles are starting to appear as the ink dries. You can see it especially over here. And what's happened is we've oversaturated the cardstock and the ink has nowhere to go. It can't evaporate anymore. So the ink stays on the paper and then as it dries in, we get this circling effect. So if we're colouring people or animal images, our little bear can end up looking like he has a bad case of the measles, you know. And the reason for it is that, so if you're finding this spotting effect in your colouring, it's more than likely because you're too heavy-handed. You can also see the unevenness of the colour over here and also the muddiness, and this will be more obvious when we introduce other colours and we start to blend, because we've oversaturated, we've gone in way too heavy-handed. You can see over here where I've used a feather touch, we get no mud, we don't get any of this measling going on, and we don't get any of this unevenness of colour. We just get the beautiful colour. So tip number 1, guys, can't stress it enough. We need a light touch when we use alcohol markers, okay? The type of cardstock we use is also really important when it comes to Copic colouring. Obviously, the ink will transfer onto pretty much any paper or cardstock, but it will just give us better results when we use a cardstock that's designed for alcohol ink. I'm using Nina Solar White here. You can use any kind of smooth cardstock and play around with different types. You'll find your own preference when it comes to colouring. So tip number 2, guys, we're going to talk about blending. And blending is such a big deal when it comes to Copic colouring that I've devoted 2 of my top 5 tips all to blending. So I think you're going to find this next tip really helpful, and it's single marker blending. when we watch videos of crafters and colorists coloring beautiful flowers, and we see them using 6 markers and 10 markers, and these babies are expensive, so not all of us have tons of markers in our stash, but I'm going to show you how you can get really, really good results with blending with just one marker. Any of the techniques I'm showing you in this video, you can apply to any colours that you have in your stash. I'm just using dark colours here because they show up better on camera. So I'm taking a single marker and I'm remembering to use a light touch, and I'm just going to lay down my colour. I'm not even using a stamped image here, guys, just to keep it simple and show you what I'm talking about without getting into the complications of a stamped image. So I've laid down a first layer of colour here. So I'm going to go back to the start of the image and I'm going to colour again. I'm going to bring my colour. I'm using a light, feather light touch. I'm not going hell for leather like I would if I was using a felt tip. And I'm going to stop short at the end of the image. I'm going to go back to the start again and I'm going to bring my colour down again. Back over that a little bit, and I'm going to stop short again. Back to the start of the image again. I'm going to bring my colour down and I'm going to lighten off and just a feather touch to bring that in. Back to the start of the image. Now I know I'm kind of contradicting myself here because I mentioned earlier that when we oversaturate the paper, we get measling and we get uneven colour, but we can get away with it a bit more for blending when we're just using one marker. So I'm going to go back to the start of my image here again and darken this top area up. Depending on how dark I want to go at the start of my image, and back up again. The other thing about Copics, it takes a couple of seconds or half a minute or so before you see the colour fully developed on the page. But you can see here, I'll hold this up to camera just so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So we've got a really nice dark colour going up here. We've got a really nice acceptable gradation of colour with just one marker. So guys, please do try out this technique, because especially if you've fallen out of love with Copics and you've tried blending and you've resigned yourself to the fact that you're not a good colorist and I'm not good, or I don't have enough colors on my stash, do try this out, because I hope that if you try this technique out, you will fall in love with Copic coloring all over again. I'm going to show you again very quickly exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to go even lighter this time. Feather touch, lay down my color, back to the start, stop short, ease off my colour as I approach the bottom, back to the start again. I'm stopping short of where I stopped the last time. Super easy, super simple. You don't need 20 different shades of brown, and you've got a nice little bear's arm or whatever it is that you're trying to colour, okay? I'm going to show you how I applied this technique to a project. These aren't stamped images. These bears were made just using dies from my stash. Apart from the muzzle piece, this bear was coloured with a single marker. And the same on this side, apart from the muzzle piece and his tummy, he was coloured with a single marker. This is an older project, and I didn't have a lot of Copics at the time when I colouring this up, so I just used a single marker for each bear. And I just wanted to show you in practice how you can apply this technique and you can get results. It's not the most fantastic. If I was doing it now, I'd do a better job because I have more colours in my stash, but this is what you can achieve with just one marker. And this is what the pros don't tell you, because we keep believing that we need, you know, to buy more and more. But you can get some really, really nice results with just one marker. It doesn't have to apply to just animals either. You can apply it to any project. Here I've coloured up a little greeting farm girl. I've done her hair with just one marker. Again, this is an older image when I didn't have too many markers in my stash. This is also a dud because I don't like it. I went in with white gel pen to add highlights and I didn't like how it looked. I was all gung-ho with the white gel pen at the time. I just don't like how it turned out, so I'm not going to use this in a project, but I just wanted to show you for the purpose of demonstrating that you can colour hair even with just one marker, because the colouring is not on the hair is not too bad. It's just the white pigment, just ignore that. But if you don't take any other tip from this video and you just try that one out, I promise you will get all excited about Copic colouring again. You can see this as it's dried. We get a really, really nice gradation of colour going on here with just one marker. So tip number 3, guys, we're going to talk more about blending and we're going to introduce some new colours into the mix. So we'll need to understand a little bit about the colouring system, but we don't need to go into it forensically because it can be a bit of a palaver. You only need to know what you need to know. So in a nutshell, the Copic system starts with a letter or 2 letters and followed by a series of numbers. The letters represent the colour family that the marker is in. So here we have an OR, and then we have an ORV. So OR is basically the red family, ORV is the red-violet family. So the letters only refer to the color family. So the first number that follows after the letter refers to how bright and vivid and sharp the color is going to be versus how muted or dull it's going to be. So 0 being the brightest, the most intense, vivid. So as the numbers go higher, the color gets duller. So RV, we know it's a red-violet family, and the first number after is 0, so we know whatever color that is, it's going to be very bright and crisp and intense. So here we have an RV, same color family, but it's a 6 after the letters. So we know whatever color it is, it's going to be a more muted version of that color. So then the next number refers to the darkness or lightness of the color. So if we have an RV00, we know it's the red-violet family. We know it's going to be crisp and intense by the 0. And the second 0 after that, we know it's going to be a very pale version of the color. Whereas this one, we have an RV09. It's the red-violet family. It's 0. We know it's going to be crisp and intense, but it's a 9. So we know it's going to be a much darker version of that color. Hope that's making sense. So if we're going to add new colors into the mix, the most important thing we need to know when it comes to blending and mixing colors is that colors in the same family will play much more nicely together than if we introduce another color family. So if I take a V01 here, this is the violet color family, even though on the surface we might think they're going to make a really nice blend together, they won't work together as nicely as these two will because they're in the same color family. The same thing applies with the first number afterwards. Colors at the first number after the letter is the same, will blend more nicely together than if we introduce other colors. So for Copic coloring and blending colors and introducing new colors, this is all fine in theory, but my tip number 3 for you is actually to try out for yourself. Play around with your own markers because the rules don't always apply when it comes to Copics. Sometimes you can introduce other color families or you can introduce other numbers, and the best way to discover what's possible is to try it out for yourself. What I do is I play around with blends and I swatch them out for myself so that I know when I go to color. You can see I obviously love coloring animals because it's all oranges and browns, and there's more cats colored in this craft room than anything else probably. So I swatch out my colors just to make it easier for myself so that I'm not working on a project and I've stamped my beautiful image and the project is almost finished. I just have to color, and then lo and behold, I make a mess of the coloring because I haven't paid attention to my blending. This just makes it easier. So when I do go to color an image, I know what colors are going to work and what aren't. So that's my top tip when it comes to blending colors. Swatch out your colors so that you make it easier for yourself. So tip number 4 is this little pot of magic here. It's Copic Opaque White. I love it. I think it's a secret weapon when it comes to correcting mistakes in my coloring because I do make lots of mistakes and this is just magic. I will show you how I use it. I'll take a stamped image here of a little cute girl with her cat. It's from MFT. And I've just started to colour here and I've made a deliberate mistake here, gone outside the line here. So I'm going to take my white pigment. This is just a watercolor brush. It's got a really nice soft tip. This is a cheapest chips €2 paintbrush. This isn't your good sable paintbrush. I'm just going to dip it in, put a little bit of white pigment on my pot, and I'm just going to paint over that blue where I've gone outside the line there. I'll take another little bit of pigment here. You can also use a white gel pen to do this, but I found that the gel pens tend to be a bit gloopy. This is super thin, but super opaque at the same time. So it does a really nice job of hiding the mistakes. And you can let that dry. So that's my top tip for correcting mistakes. And even if you make a mistake with the white gel, as I've done here, and you go over your black line, you can take a black fine liner pen and just go back over your line. But it just saves you, especially if you've, like me, you get to the end of an image, you've done a really nice job, and then you make a mess out here or something, you know, rather than throwing it away and having to start all over again, or putting it on a project where you'll see it, because it always sticks out a mile when we make the mistakes, don't it? Other people don't see them. So that's tip number 4, guys, secret weapon. So tip number 5, especially if you're only starting off in coloring, or you've lost confidence in coloring and stopped doing it because you're not happy with the results you're getting. Keep it simple. Set yourself up for better results. Don't be trying to color a complicated bouquet stamp, or you know, an image with 6 different animals in because you've seen some design team member doing that who's been doing it for years and has had years of practice, keep it simple. Nothing will motivate you and keep you going better than seeing your own improvement in your own work. Whereas if you start coloring this complicated image and you don't get it quite right, or you're just going to lose confidence in yourself and forget to have fun along the way. I know it's great to want to learn and be inspired by others and experts and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to get better and improve in our own crafting, but we do it because we love it. We lose sight of that sometimes. I think we get so caught up in, why can't my card look like Jennifer's card or whatever? And I think that's a mistake, you know. So we need to remember to have fun. When I look at my older stuff, even looking at this, this is quite old. I've got better since then, you know, and it's important to see our own improvement and stop comparing ourselves to others. So make it your own journey and have fun with it and make it easy for yourself and start simple. Keep it simple and then move on to more complicated images or more complicated coloring. So just to share a little bit of my own colouring journey with you, long story short, I had been pastel painting for a number of years. I was doing pet portraits in soft pastel and I just got into craft. I was dabbling with glass painting and polymer clay and all those kind of things. And then I stumbled across Sandy Allnock on YouTube. And if you're not familiar with Sandy, then check her out. She's a phenomenal artist and a phenomenal Copic colorist. And she's all kinds of fun charts and hexagon charts and all that kind of stuff on her channel. So do check her out. But I came across her video and she was colouring a stamped image. I knew nothing about stamps or die cutting or anything like that then. And I just fell in love with the look of a coloured image, a stamped image. So I went to my art shop and looked, you know, Copic markers, €6 a marker. That was never going to happen at that time. It was like, oh, crazy. So I bought a pack of Spectrum Noir markers and eventually, over time, bought the whole collection of the first edition Spectrum Noir markers. And then Crafters Companion changed their minds and said, no, we relaunch their markers and you can no longer get the ink refills for those markers. So I wasn't thrilled with that. So anyway, one day I went back into my art shop and I just bought one Copic and said, I'll try out a Copic. And I tried a few pro markers and a few different ones. But I bought one Copic and it was an aqua, one of the BG, the blue-green colours, and fell in love. So, and it's been a love affair really with Copics ever since. They're just my go-to alcohol markers. I really love them. I know Spectrum Noir have upgraded their markers several times, but I haven't used any of the newer ones. I haven't steered away from Copics really ever since I started using them. I just love them. The thing I love about them is that, like, I mean, there's over 350 colours in the range, in the Copic range, I think, and they are expensive, but they're worth every cent, in my opinion. And I don't have all of them, but I do have a lot because I've been collecting them over the years. But you don't need loads of them, especially if you try out a one marker blending technique that I've shared with you today. You really don't need to have tons. Just have fun with what you've got, and you don't even need Copics to try these techniques. Just play with your own markers and have fun with it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your comments and get your feedback and let me know, especially if you've tried out any of these techniques and you find that they've helped you. Please do let me know. I would love to hear your comments and share your thoughts with me and let me know how you're getting on, because we're all learning this together. I'm not an expert. I'll say that till the day I die. I'm not an expert on anything. The only thing I know for sure about life is that I know absolutely nothing. So I'm learning as we go. And I really do hope you've enjoyed this video and you find it helpful. And thank you again for watching and sticking with me. And I will chat to you all in the next video. Bye bye.